Considering that Chanukah begins this week, I'd like to focus my remarks on the upcoming holiday. As you've probably heard from me in the past, the only way to fully take advantage of a holiday is by being prepared of it, being prepared for it, preparing ourselves. I want to focus on two separate points. The first is specific to the story of Chanukah, while the second is more about the takeaway message of the lessons that we learn from the menorah. The story of Chanukah is more or less familiar. To paraphrase Jackie Mason, the Jews were in great peril. In this case, God brought about a double miracle. We won the war, so let's celebrate, let's eat. The truth, though, is a bit more complex. The issues were more subtle. Not only were Jews at risk for their lives, but Judaism was at risk for its very survival. The Greek Empire was more interested in spreading Greek culture and values than it was in conquering and enslaving the people. Greek culture, which included the celebration of the human body, philosophy, and Hellenistic values, was diametrically opposed to the values of the Torah. The Torah values beyond else meaning and purpose, sanctity and eternity, kedusha in our lives. The idea that we have a special connection and relationship with Hashem, who watches us from up on high. The mitzvos that Hashem commands us connect us to Him. When we do mitzvahs, He imparts of His kedusha to us. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvosav, who sanctified and made us holy with His mitzvos. The idea of the menorah, specifically, Chazal explain is, O si l'bay olam ki ashchina shoreh b'Yisrael. The menorah that was lit every single day in the Beis HaMikdash as part of the avoda of the Kohanim. There was a daily miracle, wherein the Kohen Gadol would pour the same amount of oil in each one of the cups on the branches of the menorah, and all of them would be extinguished by the end of the day, except for the Ner HaMa'aravi. What does this prove? A daily miracle that the Shechina is shoreh in Yisrael, that Hashem's presence dwells amongst the Jewish people. If we understand that this is what the war is about, we can now then comprehend a very strange part of the story. Think about the history. The Yevanim, the Greeks, broke into the temple. They had a tremendous opportunity, namely the looting of the Lishka, the treasure of the Beit HaMikdash. Gold and silver, diamonds and rubies, everything you can imagine. But rather than occupy themselves with the booty, they went looking for oil. As it says, Mishenichnisu hayavanim lahechal timu kol hashmanim. When the Greeks came into the Heichal, they went and they made impure their metame, all the oil. As we know, they did such a good job that when ultimately they were defeated by the Chashmonoim, all that was found was one little jar of oil that was still remained pure. So what's going on? Why did they destroy the olive oil instead of taking the diamonds and jewels? What were they thinking? The answer, of course, lies in the very purpose of the invaders. They understood that this was a battle between the light of the Torah, which is the menorah, which signifies that ki ein or ela Torah and ki ner mitzvah Torah or, and the darkness of the Greek philosophies and the ways of the Greeks. The light of the Torah versus their philosophy, their culture, their sports, their arts. They went after the oil. They made the oil into the central issue, because the oil signifies that the Shechina is with Klal Yisrael. If they could just change us on these points, they would let us have yeshivot, they would let us do mitzvot. They valued wisdom. They thought the Torah was great. It's full of wisdom. They celebrated culture. They don't mind as long as we know there's no difference. We're no better, we're no different. We have our culture, we have their culture. Let's get involved in the salad bowl of Greek culture. There's no kedusha in the world. If we could only accept their way of living and understanding, their approach to life. In the Yal Nisim prayer, which of course is the insertion for the Amidah and in benching, Birkat HaMazon, we say that it was an attempt by the Greeks, Lashkicham Torasecha, Ulavira Mechukei Ritzonecha, to make them forget your Torah, the connection with the Torah and Hashem. Ulavira Mechukei Ritzonecha, to take away from them your commandments, the idea that we learn Torah. When we learn Torah, we're connected to Hashem. When we keep mitzvot, we're connected to Hashem. That we get kedusha, the idea that we're different. That's what they tried to uproot. It's this connection with Hashem that bothers them. That we connect to Hashem through the Torah and the mitzvahs.